The Croisière du Grand Hiver was a French attempt to organize a winter naval campaign in the wake of the glorious 1st of June. Context: the Third Battle of Ushant had ended on a strategic success for the French Navy, but on the tactical level, the fleet had suffered its greatest loss since the Battle of Le Fougue. At the end of the year, the National Convention ordered that a squadron under Contre-Amiral Jean-François Renaudin, recently promoted for his defensive Vengeance du Peuple at the Third Battle of Ushant, ferry ammunition from Brest to Toulon. This squadron comprised 6 ships of the line, 3 frigates and 1 corvette. Vice-Amiral Villaret-Joyeuse was to sail the fleet of Brest out to escort Renaudin in the Bay of Biscay, cruise these waters for a fortnight, and then return to Brest while sending a 6-ship and 3 frigates strong squadron to Guadeloupe. The fleet was in bad shape, with ships in disrepair and lacking food. After several attempts, the fleet departed on the 24th of December 1794. Expedition. During the maneuvers for the departure of the fleet, the 110-gun Républicaine broke her anchor cable and, at 17:30, before she could set sails, she touched Mingant Rock. Before maneuvers could be attempted, she began to sustain damage to her hull and take in water. Despite throwing her guns overboard, she proved impossible to refloat and settled on the rock as water flooded her hull. As her boats had been damaged or torn off, it was impossible to evacuate, and with the heavy sea it was not until 9 o'clock the next day that Fougas arrived on the scene and could send boats over to rescue the crew. Eventually, only 10 men drowned, while the rest were rescued. The Redoutable also broke her cables, but managed to reach the open sea, followed by the frigate Vertu. In the afternoon of the 29th, the 35 ships of the fleet regrouped off Camaret-sur-Mer, and set sail the next day. The heavy sea of the 1st of January damaged several of the ships. Nestor lost a mast and had to double back to Brest. The Téméraire sustained hull damage and started leaking. The next day, as the weather improved, Van Stabel turned to the northwest with the light squadron, but after a few hours, a deep fog arrived and he lost contact with the fleet. The Neptune, which had been delayed upon departure by damage to her capstan, also lost the fleet and joined the light squadron on the 31st, along with 3 frigates and 2 corvettes. They would not rejoin the fleet until the 24th of January. 3 British frigates, HMS Diamond, HMS Flora and HMS Arethusa, were dispatched on the 2nd of January to investigate. HMS Diamond, her commander, Captain William Sidney Smith, raised a French flag when challenged by the fleet, which allowed her to sail on. Later, she encountered a stranded ship, whose captain hailed HMS Diamond, during which the French captain stated his ship was the Nestor. Smith, speaking perfect French, managed to talk with the French officers and acquire significant insights of the French intentions. HMS Diamond sailed into Brest Harbor on the 3rd to confirm this information. Neptune had suffered considerably from the bad weather, to the point that her captain had warned Van Stabel, on 25, another leak forced Neptune to tack as not to expose the affected section of her hull to water, and to send distress signals. For 5 days, most of the crew pumped water out of the ship and dropped the guns, ammunition and anchors overboard, until 28th at 12:30, when she reached Paris-Guayac and ran aground. 50 men were found dead in the hull, while the rest of the crew evacuated the ship. On 28, a storm broke out, and caused further damage to several ships. The leakage on Téméraire had become so worrisome that she doubled back to Brest, but lost her way en route and finally arrived in Saint-Malo. After a few days of cruise, the Neuf Thermidor had lost her stem, forcing Captain Doré to cut away the bowsprit and the upper foremast, and drop his anchors and upper battery overboard. By the 29th of January, pumps could not compensate for leakage. In the night, the ship rolled so much that the yards of the mainmast fell, destroying 3 pumps. From then on, the ship lowered in the water, and when the lower battery touched the waves, Majestu and Mara sent boats over to evacuate the crew. Nerf Thermidor was deserted by 4 o'clock on the 31st, and she foundered around 7 o'clock. Soup B suffered the same fate. She had started to take in water on the 26th, and Captain Colomb had warned Villaret that his ship was sinking. Efforts to pump out water could not compensate for the leakage, even after throwing the artillery overboard, and on 30th, Villaret ordered the ship abandoned. Montagnard and Papillon rescued the crew, but 21 men were lost. The Scipion, an old ship that was scheduled for decommissioning, started slowly disintegrating soon after she left the harbor. By the 25th, her pumps could not keep ahead of the leakage, and Montagnard, 31 men railways had been tasked to watch her. After an attempt to wrap her with cables failed, Captain Huguet requested and obtained permission to return to port, escorted by 31 Mai. In the afternoon, the main topmast failed, breaking the main yard, which penetrated the deck vertically and broke 2 of the 9 pumps. Its leverage further contributed to the dismantling of the ship. At 1600, Huguet requested assistance from 31 Mai, which evacuated the crew in spite of a heavy sea. The ship was abandoned by 3:15 the next morning. Convention lost her rudder and was towed back to Lorient by Pelletier. On the 3rd of February, the fleet regrouped in Brest. It had captured 70 merchantmen, as well as the 20-gun HMS Daphne. It had lost 3 ships, and others had sustained severe damage. The Renaudin squadron had to delay its mission to reach Toulon in order to support the rest of the fleet. Renaudin eventually departed for Toulon on the 22nd of February with Gemaps, Montagnard, 31 Mai, Aquilon, Tyrannicide and Révolution. The frigates Courageuse, Embuscade, Félicité and the corvette Unité. They suffered from heavy seas and strong westerly winds. 31 Mai lost her mizzen and her main topmast when she entered the Mediterranean, and had to be taken in tow by Tyrannicide. They nevertheless reached Toulon safely on the 2nd of April. Aftermath. Overall, the campaign is considered as a naval disaster because of the heavy losses sustained without the intervention of the Royal Navy, and especially since damaged ships could not easily be repaired with the endemic shortage of material in French arsenals. The French Navy effectively ceased to contest the British naval superiority from this point. Another attempt at a winter cruise was made with the Expedition d'Irlande in December 1796, and met with a similar disaster.